Merry Christmas everyone, hope you all having great holidays. This is part 3 of What If Naruto Was a Hollow. I have created a playlist for this What If, where you can find all the parts, link is in the description. If you guys enjoy this What If, and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. Before we start, please do support for more awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. It really means a lot. So let's dig into the what if. The burst of light lasted for approximately 5 seconds, and for it, neither one of the two foxes could see anything else. Just a blinding, all-encompassing flash of bright yellow that hindered the visibility for anyone in the vicinity. A deafening creak filled the room, an ominous noise that promoted anxiety for Naruto and excitement for the former prisoner behind the bars. Kyuubi was finally being set free. This would be a defining moment for both of them. Whoever won would fulfill something great. Whoever lost, well. The light subsided after what seemed like an eternity, and the doors to Kyuubi's cage were wide open, the provocative barrier that always kept Naruto from being attacked by the being behind the bars. How ironic that he would be the one to remove it. Whatever the emotion felt, it was a tense atmosphere, one that reeked solely of barely restrained conflict between the two enemies. Ironically, nothing happened. The Kyuubi just stood there stoically, an intense look of glee painted on its face, and in no way poised to attack its long-hated container, as Naruto was oh so led to believe. This behavior stunned him, and Naruto was immediately on guard due to the Kyuubi's bizarre behavior. Why wasn't it attacking him? Was it waiting for the perfect time? Or was there some sort of ulterior motive? The hollow edged closer to the behemoth fox, biting his lip as he approached. The Kyuubi moved its giant muzzle, causing Naruto move back skittishly as the Kyuubi reared back its head and laughed harder than Naruto had ever heard it laugh before. As the Kyuubi put down its giant head, the eerie laugh immediately mutated into a hostile roar. The room shook violently, though Naruto in the middle was completely unaffected. That is, until the Kyuubi raised its huge paw and smacked Naruto with it like he was just a bug. The hollow was sent flying across the area, smashing headfirst into a wall on the bottom left side. Naruto left a slight imprint on the stone wall, and as he slumped to the ground he felt the Kyuubi's rank, red energy assault his nostrils. Truly a being of absolute hatred and malice, fed by countless atrocities. It was truly captivating, despite Naruto's dislike for the fox. The Kyuubi sneered. "You are truly suicidal." Naruto altered his position so he was laying against the wall to face the Kyuubi. A loopy grin molted onto his face, and he let out a vulgar, high-pitched laugh at his current situation. He collapsed to the ground in his laughter, banging his paws against the ground, as if it were the most comedic thing in the world. This did nothing more than infuriate the Kyuubi. How can you be laughing in a situation like this? You're dead. You sealed your fate the minute you opened that cage. And now you're laughing at this like none of it ever happened. No, it's not insane enough, Naruto muttered to himself, the hollow's face taking on a stoic expression. The Kyuubi picked up on that. Insane? I'd say you're plenty insane as it is, brat. Laughing at your own misfortune, wanting to cement your own demise. If that's not insanity, then what is? Naruto grinned up at the Kyuubi. It's not insanity. I'm forcing myself to behave like this. It goes against every natural reaction that I have, yet I will continue to do this. Why? Because the more I do this, the more natural this reaction will come to me. Right now I'm making a mental checklist to do things that will suppress the feelings of love and compassion that the Shinigami me forced onto me. When this reaction finally becomes natural to me, those feelings will immediately cease. Naruto got to his feet, only slightly damaged despite being thrown into a wall. His thick skin was truly remarkable. He looked at the Kyuubi intensely, with a different posture and feel than the usual emotional hollow. You know, you are the perfect opponent for me to fight after being violated by my Shinigami self. Let's face it, Kyuubi. I hate you, and you hate me. I would feel no guilt over your passing, anyway, which means I won't be hindered by those emotions this time. Expect me to be fully serious this time. I have no time to play around." Kyubi was silent, wondering how this little hollow could be so bipolar. Going from goofy to painstakingly serious in a split second. Judging from his previous actions, he probably wouldn't take this seriously anyway. He would likely contradict himself in the fight and start acting goofy again. Probably just another defense mechanism against love and compassion. That's likely how he would do it. Another thing to add to his mental checklist to help him become insane. A large-scale rumbling cut off the thoughts of both Naruto and Kyubi. It came from all directions, and it seriously bothered Naruto there for a minute. Little pieces of stone crumbled and fell off of the wall. A strange, red mist hovered in the air throughout the entire chamber. As it touched the walls, parts of it solidified to become a thick red ooze that ran down the walls at an impossible slowness. As the substance oozed down, it incinerated the wall, causing wisps of burnt stone to rise into the air and become one with the gaseous red substance. Naruto actually began to feel a little bit dizzy. "What's happening?" asked Naruto, swiveling his head back and forth much like a confused child. The Kyubi laughed raucously out of nowhere, apparently even happier at this new revelation. Naruto noticed an extra kind of giddiness to the fox's laughter, and despite his better judgment, became curious to what the fox was so happy about. He opened his mouth to speak, before he turned away from the Kyubi to face the degrading wall. "No. I don't want to know," he said illogically, contradicting his previous statements. Kyubi stopped laughing at that. Naruto was getting annoying. Oh, how his new behavior infuriated the Kyubi. "You insignificant insect," the Kyubi roared, his haunches rising. "Your mind is deteriorating right before your very eyes. When you took off the seal, the support keeping me in your body mostly vanished. My power will literally eat your body away from the inside until your body, mind, and soul is completely absorbed. All within the next 10 minutes. Tell me that doesn't frighten you," the Kyubi roared, hoping to get some kind of negative reaction from him. Naruto said nothing. "Don't you get it? You're doomed. You can't hope to beat me, let alone within the next 10 minutes. Your absolute disregard for your own demise disgusts me. Run around frantically. Scream in agony. Don't just sit there like a fool with your back turned on this situation," the Kyubi ranted, as it charged up its giant chakra ball, though it was considerably weaker than its normal one. It released the ball, and a blinding flash erupted on the scene, as the giant ball of destruction rushed at high speeds directly towards where Naruto was sitting with his back turned. He didn't flinch when it came his way. The energy tore right through the wall like it was paper, presumably obliterating Naruto right along with it. The beam of energy held fast, before it dissipated after around 5 seconds, leaving a charred depression of wall where it had impacted. Kyubi stared at the destroyed wall for a few seconds, before he heard an inane, high-pitched laughter come from inside the stone, just from behind where Naruto was sitting before. "It looks like I'm getting into some exceptionally good fights today. I'm getting all jittery just thinking about it. I'll have to tell Furumose about you once you're dead." A barely singed Naruto was crawling out of the wall, doing many flamboyant and unnecessary movements as he came out. From the way the top of his head was burned, it was apparent that he had avoided the blast by barely dodging beneath it and crouching against the wall. If it were any other opponent, the Kyubi would have laughed sinisterly at his opponent's plight. But this hollow's behavior was so infuriating to him that he only performed a menacing growl. He could sense the sane mind underneath all the perplexing mannerisms. This hollow fully had the capability to act sane. To act serious. And yet, he wasn't. He was treating this whole fight as a joke. As if the fox wasn't worth his time. He was dead on in thinking that the hollow would contradict himself with what he said earlier. The hollow was running at him now, his movements loopy, yet at the same time, effective. The Kyubi raised his claw high into the air, red energy wisping around the limb like a phantom arm. He locked onto the fox hollow, before slamming down the appendage on the smaller fox. The attack missed its target, but the destruction it caused in its wake more than made up for this. An absurdly powerful shockwave was unleashed from the point of impact. The walls and floors split into numerous pieces, and the disturbing paintings of Naruto fell off of the wall. Naruto laughed, using his superior agility to hop onto a piece of debris falling from the ceiling. He performed unorthodox flips to bound from one rock to the next. Using his current one as a platform, he sank his claws into the firm rock, before using it to propel himself the rest of the way, attempting to reach the top of Kyuubi's head. "You," began the Kyuubi as he readied his energy-laced claws once again, prepared to strike the airbound hollow. "Damn you!" He thrust his claws forward, but Naruto barely avoided the attack by contorting his body in midair. Yet, the gust of wind and shockwave created from the attack was nearly enough to send Naruto flying. Naruto and Kyuubi traded blows in midair, Naruto's large tails being able to block one of Kyuubi's claws. As he fell slightly, the claws chased after him, nearly getting through his defenses. He used all of his strengths to block all four claws with his own and his tail. He dodged to the side, breaking one of the Kyuubi's claws as they passed by his right hip. The nail of the claw were flying, and Naruto slashed the skin of the Kyuubi's paw with both of his claws. His deed done, Naruto shot out his tail and grappled it around the end of one of Kyuubi's claws. The fox hollow pushed himself onto the main part of Kyuubi's paw, just as the beast in question used his other paw to attack the hanging hollow. He lifted his head and neck to avoid a deadly strike that would have taken off his head, thick skin or no. Kyuubi, now annoyed by Naruto's speed and agility, raised his paw to his face, wanting to attack Naruto from that angle. Naruto, sensing the opportunity, leaped off of Kyuubi's paw. "You left an opening!" Naruto yelled, as he came down on the Kyuubi's face. He didn't hesitate. Absolutely no hesitation at all. In a fight with a great being like the Kyuubi, any waiting would invite instant death. The smaller fox timed his leap so he would land near Kyuubi's eyes, to which he then slashed out at the red iris with both claws. He felt his claws penetrate the soft substance, and the hollow dragged his natural weapons down, creating a worse and even more painful injury for the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi roared in pain, emitting his signature shockwave as he did. The bijou bucked Naruto off his head, sending Naruto flying about 50 feet in the air. The beast charged up his energy ball again, making it slightly bigger and more powerful. This one would surely destroy Naruto. But Naruto was angled to the right and easily missed the fired beam of light, which Kyuubi fired too late. Not to mention, as his current rate, the hollow would land directly on the back of the Kyuubi. The Kyuubi watched as Naruto effortlessly fell onto his slanted down back, and hissed as Naruto sank his sharp claws into his backside. Without even giving the enormous fox time to respond, Naruto used both of his front paws to grasp a handful of the Kyuubi's fur. With this all said and done, he sank his razor-sharp teeth into the fox's flesh. The Kyuubi and Naruto roared at the same time, as Kyuubi had his flesh bitten off and Naruto began chewing said flesh. A nasty hissing noise came from out of Naruto's mouth. The acidic flesh of Kyuubi seared the insides. Cankerous sores sprung up along his gums, and the hollow spit out the poisonous flesh as fast as he could. Naruto could have kicked himself for his move. He had forgotten that the fox was basically made up of highly corrosive energy. If that was the case, then eating him would definitely be out of the question. Maybe I underestimated him a little. His speed and defense may be lacking compared to mine, but his raw power far outclasses my own, and then there is the matter of his poisonous flesh, which I cannot eat. The cogs rotated around in Naruto's mind, trying to come up with a solution. This is my mind, isn't it? I should have the advantage. The released seal is deteriorating my body and mind, but that shouldn't matter as long as they both are slightly intact. From the looks of things, the energy has corroded about 1/8 of my mind right now. Once my mind is destroyed, I will die and the Kyuubi will be released. The energy will eat away at my corpse too. The Shinigami. Naruto paused, snapped his eyes open and staring straight ahead. He didn't notice the long, red tail slither up from beneath him like a slimy serpent. That's it. As he finished his thoughts, he felt a sharp jolt of pain enter his mind, and a sort of profound dizziness struck him. The Ryoryoku eating away at his mind must have been getting to him. And, from the way his feet scalded, he would be injured simply by standing on the kyubi for an extending period of time. The small hollow's luck become even worse as he felt something big and hairy wrap itself around his midsection. As he realized it was one of his opponent's tails, the hairy thing lurched forward, taking a grunting Naruto with it. The tail's owner forcefully pulled Naruto up to his face, staring at him with hate-filled red eyes. Naruto grinned, releasing a puff of steam from his injured mouth that had apparently not been released. The two super beings stared each other down for a good 15 seconds, one with a look of unrestrained hatred and the other with a look of poisonous amusement. 7 minutes left, the kyubi boomed simply. Naruto's grin widened. 7 minutes until you perish, and I'm free to go forth with my path of destruction. Again with the killing and the destruction and the pain. You really have a problem, you know that? Always being so selfish and cruel. Have some regard for other people's lives and feelings, why don't you? The kyubi laughed. Says the ones who wants to destroy your former village and all of Seoul society. You're nothing but a hypocrite. The kyubi spat out the words like it were tightened his tail's grip on Naruto. Naruto whistled happily, thoroughly unconcerned with his current plight. True, true. My path of destruction is just as bad as yours, if not worse. But, at least I have a goal. Something to strive for. You just destroy things at random, while wandering through the world with nothing else to do or think about. A pathetic existence such as yours I have never seen before. How do you even stand it? Naruto stopped speaking, and lowered his voice to a whisper. But, your pathetic life is going to be over, soon. Ha! And such a blatant lie that is. You are beaten, out of time, and have never had the advantage during our entire fight. And yet you continue to arrogantly believe in all your bullshit. You call my existence pathetic? Just look at yourself and you shall see the true image of a pitiful being. Pitiful? Me? Not really. You could at least call it dedicated. We are both greatly emotional beings, but the difference between you and me is that once I find a goal, I never waver from its course. Naruto stopped talking for a minute to adopt a mocking and fake face of pleading. Please Kyubi, I don't want you to die. Just kidding, I do want you to die. Your existence is so pathetic that you must die. He laughed heartily at his illogical behavior. How contradictory can you get? Asked the larger fox angrily. More than that, you know, said Naruto. Ah, so it was another one of those stupid acts of his. That makes sense. You might be thinking right now, oh, he's just making a groundless statement about killing me, but I assure you that isn't the case. You see, I still have a sane, rational mind and I can very well use it to my advantage. I thought back to my Shinigami self a little while back, and it got me thinking about other things. I was enlightened to the fact that an individual's mindscape can be warped to a certain extent. You wouldn't, the kyubi began. A depraved grin. I regained control over my mind as he was dying. That means, since the seal has been released, you are in my territory now. And since you are not a part of me, you can't take control like the other Naruto did. That's impossible. You can't will anything. That can't be done in a human's mind. Well, it's a good thing I'm not a human anymore then. Kyubi's eyes widened. Naruto was a hollow, not a human. The same rules wouldn't apply to him. You were much safer in the seal, Kyubi. Where I couldn't get to you, Naruto whispered as an afterthought. He focused his mind on a particular object, attempting to will it to do whatever he wanted it to. He grinned as a slight explosion appeared in the wall to the right of the opened cage. It's a little difficult. Nothing what I wanted happened. Though, I think I can make this work on my next try. Naruto mused. Not that I'll let you do that. I kill you in one strike before you ever master that technique, roared Kyubi, opening his gaping maw in order to tear Naruto to shreds with his razor-sharp teeth. Naruto focused again before that could, and with a grunt pulled one of the cage's bars from its place. The bar hovered in the air for a second, before it was sharpened to a point. The Kyuubi's teeth were mere feet away from Naruto when the sharpened bar speared Kyuubi in one of the tails, before lodging into the adjacent wall. The Kyuubi roared as his head thrust to the side as a result of the knockback, and when his tail was impaled on the makeshift spear. Naruto was sent flying from the Kyuubi's grip, laughing raucously all the while. He grunted as he fell in the water a good distance away, before shakily getting to his feet to wipe some blood from the corner of his mouth. Ha ha, he panted. Looks like I can alter my mind in various ways. I wonder if I can alter the landscape. Before he followed through though, Kyuubi had already painfully yanked out the altered bar, pinning him to the wall. The enraged fox halted, reared back, and sent it spiraling at Naruto with one of his other tails. Whoa! Careful now. You don't want me getting hurt, do you? Asked Naruto as he hopped to the side to avoid the spear. The Kyuubi looked at his wounded tail and then back at Naruto, a sneer forming on his visage. Insolent brat, how dare you do such a thing to me? Damn you, and your mental powers. Oh. I'm hurt. I don't want to be damned. How could wish such a horrible thing on me? Asked Naruto emotionally. His shrill voice reverberated throughout the entire chamber, and it really got on his nerves. I've had enough of you and your bullshit. I'm going to end this now. He shot towards Naruto suddenly, his claw extending in a horizontal strike. On the end of each of the claws, a deep red orb of light formed and was quickly increasing in size. They were each thoroughly reminiscent of a weaker form of the fox's strong ball. This form of attack will easily render you dead. Say goodbye to your life, brat. Maybe I can increase the power of my attacks as well. The possibilities are endless. Too bad I'll only be able to use this in my mind. Naruto was thinking, unconcerned with the charging Kyuubi. Naruto met the fox halfway through his excursion, and used a powerful leap to push himself up to the center of the Kyuubi's paw. The orbs of energy were flanking him around all directions, but with their current course, they would miss. Why did he? The Kyuubi started as the smaller fox approached the pad of his giant paw. He was cut off suddenly when Naruto let loose a violent kick from his back paw. It impacted with the Kyuubi's own paw, and with a little willing to make it stronger, Naruto timed it so it reflexed inwards towards the Kyuubi's head. Shit, he timed it so it would, the Kyuubi thought. The orbs on his claws were fully charged now, and he was just about to release when his paw turned unexpectedly towards his own body. The attack discharged, sending out 4 beams of searing light, each a little bit larger than a zero. The 4 attacks merged to form one giant beam, which engulfed the Kyuubi's head in a vicious yet mesmerizing display of light. The Kyuubi screamed in pain, yet it came out as more of a roar. Kyuubi was thrown back by the mere force of the attack, and he found himself thrown against another one of the bars. The light dissipated, and Kyuubi's head and top part of his torso was heavily scorched black. It would seem like the fox's own power had an adverse effect on him. Naruto laughed at the fox's misfortune, his joy becoming insidious. And now to follow it up with some theatrics, announced Naruto madly, as he wrestled more bars from the cage to become sharp spears. While the Kyuubi was disoriented, the hollow sent out all 5 spears to pin the fox to the wall by his legs and one of his tails. The abused Kyuubi struggled to get free, but the bars of the cage were still slightly imbued with sealing energy, so the Kyuubi was unable to escape, at least until all the energy drained out of the bars. Kyuubi's ears pricked up as he heard rustling near his legs. There was Naruto, leaping his way up to the Kyuubi's face. A smug look of satisfaction was on his face, almost like he knew that he had won. I find this very fitting. It serves as the end of the 19-year-old conflict between you and me. I always felt like you were something to be feared, and for a while I genuinely did fear you. I used to think you were immortal. Invincible, if you will. But, not anymore. I'm done with fear, and you are done in general. And now, you will die here. Killed by your own cage. Naruto gave his speech as he ascended onto the Kyuubi's snout. Goodbye, Kyuubi. I won't be sad to see you go. Naruto choked out. The sad tone was there, but it sounded so acted and contrived it might as well have been fake. Wait. Don't you at least want to know the circumstances behind your death? The Kyuubi said randomly, as Naruto halted bringing out the last bar of the cage. He looked at the merciless fox suspiciously, seeming to want to know if this was a trick. What do you mean, the circumstances behind my death? I thought I simply died of chakra overuse, asked Naruto against his better judgment. Kyuubi emitted a low chuckle from his throat, a vile laughter that set Naruto on edge. Oh, please. Like you could ever die of that while I am sealed in you. Naruto stumbled over words trying to think of a response, but he couldn't make one. The fox could be lying, but why would he? And why would he die of chakra overuse, when he had a large supply of it thanks to the fox? Then, the Kyuubi chuckled again. Oh, it's very simple. You didn't die of chakra overuse, at least on your own you didn't. Your body and myself would alert you to this if you actually were dying from chakra overuse. Think of it like pain, it's a signal that alerts your brain of something wrong. You see, your father had a very pivotal role in all this. My father? Naruto questioned, worried about where this would go. Kyuubi's eyes squinted. Yes, your father, Kyuubi hissed. That man's consciousness was set to appear in the seal should you activate 8 tails, which you in fact did. He then would restore both the seal and your chakra, the Kyuubi said. But except he didn't restore your chakra. He only believed he was restoring your chakra. Artificially restoring chakra is impossible in itself. The only way to do it is to have it be restored naturally. The fool didn't know, and despite his petty beliefs, he attempted to restore your chakra. Yet, all he did was numb your ability to sense that your chakra was running out. Sort of like adding an adrenaline rush. You get it, now? You went back into battle believing you had chakra, as you couldn't feel any chakra fatigue. You kept on exerting and forcing the chakra to come. And then finally, it caught up with you. Your chakra coils were strained too much, and the worst-case scenario happened. You died. A tense silence filled the room as Kyuubi let a smile come onto his face. Naruto was shaking in absolute rage. How dare his father do something like that to him? How many mistakes would the man make when it came to him? It seemed like all his father did was make things bad for him. First, he seals this asshole into him, with the mindset that he would use the power to protect a village that hated him. Not to mention shouldering him with the burden of defeating some creepy fucker in a mask that wanted to bring the corrupt ninja world to ruin. All the while dying and leaving him behind with nothing. No money, no house, no help. Nothing. And to top it all off, he does the ultimate mistake. Killing him. What an asshole. His hate for his father skyrocketed, easily going to the top of his list of things he hated. That man was now his number one enemy. Even more so than Konoha or Soul Society. Though, if he was right, Namikaze Minato was probably happily going through his afterlife in Soul Society without any care in the world. If he were to destroy the Shinigami, and by extension, Soul Society, then there was a great chance that he would run into the man on his excursion. Kyuubi grinned. He could now die happily, after causing yet another torment for Naruto to endure. And, if he was lucky, then Namikaze Minato would be destroyed by extension. If he wasn't going to destroy anything, then he was sure as hell going to pass on that task to someone else. A legacy, if you will. Kyuubi laughed again, a wide grin on his face. Now you know he was cut off. Without even looking at the fallen fox, Naruto took down the bar, sharpened it, and thrust it through the Kyuubi's head as quick as lightning. Normally, this wouldn't get the fox dead for long, but Naruto would take the chance to absorb the Kyuubi's power and permanently kill off the fox. The two foxes were still slightly in sync with each other, so Naruto would still be able to take the fox's power just like when he was alive. Only this time, the power would stay. The Kyuubi himself had no time to register the sharp bar enter through his eye socket. He continued on with his ramblings, telling Naruto of his death and of his father. He had no idea he was to be absorbed. And so, the great Kyuubi, the strongest of the Bijou, died. At the hands of his own cage, and leaving a legacy. It had all happened so fast. He had just killed his longtime enemy, the Kyuubi, and before he knew it, he found himself back in the arena. With all remnants of another entity in his mind gone, the stability of the mindscape began to fade. The mindscape began to shake and distort, and once he blinked, it was gone. He was back in the arena, still in the safety of the hole that had been dug for him. No time appeared to have passed, proving that the flow of time was different in the mindscape. But even so, he could feel the scalding power of the Kyuubi coursing through his body and mixing with his Ryatsu. He had succeeded. The Kyuubi's power was his. Naruto gave a lunatic grin. It was time to go wild, and maybe make some friends. Nah, why would he make friends here when he was just going to kill everyone? That was illogical, which is why he thought of it in the first place. He was still absorbing the power, and yet he was already being drowned in the awesome power. The feel of it, like he could do anything, was intoxicating. But, he was cut off, as during his thoughts about killing, he felt a strong pang of guilt rack his body. Another courtesy of the Shinigami. Just confirming that it had been real. The mixed feeling of corruption, bloodlust, and guilt was a strange, and somewhat disturbing one. And it was not something that Naruto enjoyed. But, that feeling would subside soon enough, when Naruto's body began going through the change. It was unmistakable, the sudden condensation of power into a better form. Already it was drowning him in its powerful grip. Naruto's body began to morph. Drowning. As Naruto underwent his transformation, it felt as though he had been submerged into a burning lake of fire. An intense feeling of depraved pleasure had morphed into nothing more than a sensation of pure agony. The power that he had gained for his own benefit was now threatening to consume him, and make him into a mindless beast. Drowning. Even now, he could feel it. The rush of the hundreds of souls he had consumed, including Kyuubi's, throughout his entire body. The cold touch of their essences sent shivers down his spine. He could just feel them eating away at him. Attempting to gain control of his body. Gain control of him. He muttered something incomprehensible in the dark, in a shaky voice that seemed to spell complete hopelessness. All of the hollows, all of their despair, all of their hatred, all of their sadness. All of those things unified under one being, projecting themselves through Naruto, all as one. There came painful sounding cracking noises from over all areas of Naruto's body. His eyes rolled into the back of his head, and all four of his legs receded into his own body. The voices of the crowd above him faded, and all he could hear was the endless sounds of hundreds of souls fighting inside his mind. His vision blurred, and the world around him began to rock and shake. He held his front paw in front and face, vaguely sensing the blurry shape and texture. He caught his breath when little pieces of flesh flaked off his paw, all of them joining together to mingle in the soft breeze. He numbly noted that this was happening to his entire body. His legs, his head, his stomach. All of it. His body was dissolving into dust, yet the sense of burning pain was diminishing. It was like the rapidly enclosing feeling of oblivion numbing him to any sort of feeling. Before long, he reached that oblivion. His former body was completely destroyed after about a minute of changing, and for a second he felt it as he relinquished control. The unbearable cold chill of nothingness. If he gave in to those other souls, that was what was going to happen to him. And then, he came back. The flakes of Naruto's body dispersed into the wind, but a shapeless black mass, almost like a silky cloth, formed on the direct spot where he had disappeared. It was surreal. This was the feeling of being bodiless, of being ethereal. Nothing more than a consciousness that existed without a body, hardly aware of what it was doing. The black mass began to fester, before it shot up towards the sky at much faster speed, twisting around itself as it rose about 50 feet in the air. It displaced dirt as it rose, making Naruto's tunnel even larger than before. Then, it started to take form. The black mass became a billowing black robe that hid the being's soon-to-be arms. It grew chalk-white legs that sprouted from beneath the thing's robe, with large, pointed feet the same color as its legs. Its head appeared next, following the same pattern as its torso. Finally, its mask appeared. A vulpine mask similar to Naruto's other one, yet it was flatter with more rounded features. The eye holes were empty and sunken, and they just stared out into space. It was in stark contrast to the former Naruto's life-filled eyes. Naruto glanced downwards at an impossibly slow rate, surveying his new body. He had just barely wrestled control from the other hollows he had absorbed, and was thoroughly relieved when he didn't turn out like most of the other Gillian. He was superior than them. He still retained his consciousness. He would continue to evolve. He opened his mouth in order to say something, but the only noise that came out was a low, primal roar. He tried again, but the result was the same. As he thought about it, he realized that he had never heard a Gillian speak before. Did they have the ability? Whatever was wrong with his vocal cords, he didn't know. But, he had a sinking feeling that he would never be able to communicate with others as long as he was a Gillian. The spectators were stunned by this new Gillian with the unique mask, and as it roared their attention was drawn to its mask. It was almost exactly the same as that rabid fox hollow from earlier. That disgusting being had evolved. Questions exploded in the viewers' heads like fireworks. How had he evolved from right under their noses? How didn't he die from the barrage of Zeros from the Gillian? What rock did he crawl out from under? The fox's sudden evolution was just so ridiculous, even if most of them admitted they were used to the impossible happening in Huecomundo. The other Gillian did not notice the presence of their new brethren, not even when it slowly thundered on over to them and bit a chunk out of the closest one to it. The wounded Gillian roared, before it collapsed onto the ground much like a falling tower. Naruto chewed stoically on his meal, as the other Gillians finally noticed his presence and swiveled their heads to look at him. He didn't look at them, not even when they began milling directly around him. He broke the circle by eating another one directly to his right, and the slow and unintelligent Gillian were unable to respond as he walked out of the circle. After around a minute, 5 Gillian mustered up the organization to all use their Zeros simultaneously on the new one. They didn't even get to use it as they were all slashed diagonally across the midsection in a silver streak before they even got to use their attack. The diagonally bisected hollows roared one last time before they vanished into dust. Naruto himself roared when he turned around to view the destroyed Gillian, and was slightly relieved to see Furumo standing there. He was flaked with dried blood, and his mask wore an bitter scowl, but he seemed relatively unharmed. "Naruto, is that you?" "It is, isn't it? You've evolved into a Gillian, and you've had the rare miracle of retaining a conscience. With your personality, I guess that's no surprise, huh? You're so determined and egotistical that there's no way you'd ever fall victim to oblivion. You saw what happened, didn't you? That cataclysmic attack. The attack that wiped out our comrades. You don't care, do you?" Naruto roared in response, and Furumo's felt a great sadness blossom inside of him due to the loss of his newfound friend. "That's right, you can't talk. In fact, you probably haven't even noticed that I'm here right now. I must be losing my mind after all that time in prison." Furumo's slashed an incoming Gillian. It roared one last time before dissolving into a black mist. "Us hollows, we have to eat to survive. But, does that mean we should enjoy it? That we should always adhere to the contraband stereotypes of the Shinigami? I hate eating other hollows. Every time I bite into their flesh, I hear the cold contempt the Shinigami race has for us. We have at least one thing in common, Naruto. We both hate the Shinigami. I don't know what happened to make you hate them, but when I saw you for the first time in the hive, it gave me hope. That there was a solitary beacon of divine vengeance and justice against the murdering Shinigami. We're different than most other hollows, who are simply content to about their lives, uncaring of the effects the Shinigami have on our species. Furumo's stopped to stare dumbly into space as the Gillian Naruto completely ignored him, and began chewing on yet another Gillian. It was surprising. This Naruto ate with a slow boredom, in comparison with the former Naruto who ate with greedy relish. Maybe that was an improvement. Almost like he was anticipating an attack, he pulled himself up from his crouched position, and began to slowly charge up his newfound Zero. The red ball of energy formed slowly, much slower than the other Gillian. But, as he released it, the red stream of dangerous light tore through a slowly oncoming Gillian, leaving a gaping hole where the creature's stomach would have been. The downed Gillian fell like a skyscraper, almost knocking into some of its fellows as it collapsed. The Gillian looked at their downed comrade, and didn't even notice anything when Naruto had bit into the shoulder of the closest Gillian yet again. He ripped the black fabric-like substance from the bitten shoulder, growling slightly as the Gillian fell. One Gillian looked at its fallen companions for an extended period of time, long enough for Naruto to reveal grisly, white arms from his cloak. They grasped the Gillian's shoulders, finally prompting the stupid beast to notice. Naruto and the other Gillian stared each other down for a few seconds, before the grabbed Gillian finally realized it was in danger, and began charging up its Zero. Before it could release it though, Naruto bit into the other Gillian's shoulder blade and tore another chunk clean off. His growling got even louder. The Gillian released its Zero as it fell, angled slightly upwards. The attack clipped some of the spectators in the crowd, atomizing them instantly, much to the dismay of all the other spectators who weren't killed. The hissing and jeering drowned out Naruto's growling, though it wouldn't be that way for long as Naruto's growl became a piercing roar, one of being in clearly visible pain. The jeering from the crowd died down almost instantly after Naruto emitted that awful cry. His Ryatsu, it was getting stronger. Much stronger than ever before. A steam-like red aura was rising from Naruto's body, and Naruto's roaring increased as the mist became thicker and thicker. It even began to form a shroud around Naruto. A cold ball of anxiety appeared in Furumo's stomach, seeing the all-too-familiar spectacle unfold itself upon Naruto. His haunches drooped in nervousness, and he was unable to settle the feeling in his gut as the red aura completely wrapped around Naruto. No, it can't be. It's ludicrous. Those thoughts only served to straighten Furumo's, and did nothing for the intense feeling of emotion that was curled away inside him. He heard Naruto roar again, and realized how ridiculous those thoughts that comforted him were. He was wrong. It was the real deal. It's... said Furumo's in a near-silent whisper. The simple word produced more awe than a shocked scream ever could. Naruto was now nothing more than a blank silhouette in the swirling torrent of powerful energy. A tense silence filled the arena as every being watching the sight unfold before their very eyes. The spectators had stopped jeering, the Gillians stood stock still, not even milling around as they usually do. Only Baragon showed no visible reaction, though the tightening of his grip on the throne would indicate that he was indeed bothered. A few of the weaker hollows fainted, the darkest corner of their minds producing nothing other than raw fear. The animalistic instinct of fight or flight. And this thing was definitely telling their minds to flee. Flee and never go near here again. Many individuals caught their breath, as the silhouette of Naruto began to morph. He was rapidly shrinking, his two-legged body once again changing to become four-legged. The red aura thickened even more, and the silhouette of Naruto became fully hidden from view by the thick, dark energy. And suddenly, the energy stopped moving. Dead silence reverberated throughout the entire arena, and no one said a word until the energy started picking up motion yet again. It rose and rose in speed, until it intensified to the point where it was buffeting around wildly, long tendrils of Ryatsu lashing out at anything that dared touch it. All non-Menos level hollows in the arena found breathing to be difficult, the intense spiritual pressure smothering them. Some of the Gillian found themselves being whipped by the red energy, their big bodies serving as a big target for disaster. The Ryatsu tore through their bodies like paper, leaving gaping and mortal wounds to any Gillian who got too close. After around a minute of this, a small explosion was heard coming from Naruto's position inside the vortex. A second one resounded directly after, and then the energy and smoke began to disperse. When it cleared all the way, a fresh Naruto emerged, vastly different from his short-lived Gillian self. He held a look of satisfied confusion, pleased with what had suddenly happened, yet also greatly confused. His bipedal body had once again changed back to a quadrupedal form similar to when he was a normal hollow. He was smaller than before, a large difference in size between his Gillian self. Yet, he looked significantly more dangerous despite his small frame. With the exception of his mask, he was covered in a deep red bony armor, bulky enough to protect, but small enough to be maneuverable. His mask was more vulpine, more pronounced in its features. Yet, it did nothing to hide the cruel, terrible visage that lurked beneath its porcelain. The fox's gaze was once again evil, and once again mocking. Spikes were jutting up from various places along Naruto's body, a testament to his new appearance. Smaller spikes were projected from the hollow's neck, ankles, and knees. Yet easily the most prominent were the two larger twin spikes that jutted out from the top of his shoulder blades. They shot up before pointing forward in a curve, flanking both sides of Naruto's mask. They seemed to shine slightly with an unnatural gleam, which was the most noticeable in the dim light they were currently under. Claws even more vicious-looking adorned the hollow's feet. They looked denser, sharper, like they could cut nearly anything to ribbons. 9 tails sprouted from the fox's rear, covered in a thin red armor and poised in a clockwise rotating spiral. Ajuchas, Furumo's whispered, not in fear or awe, but in mutual understanding. I just don't understand how. Ixiso. Barragan mused, his booming voice drawing the attention of several nearby hollows. They had never heard of anything like this before, but apparently their king had. I've seen this before. The natural phenomenon even rarer than the Gillian's evolution to Ajuchas. Those Gillians set to evolve to the next stage of existence change after consuming a mere 5 or 6 other Gillian. His servants and guards looked at their king curiously, having never heard of anything like this. Barragan raised his right arm daintily, an act of disdain against those ignorant fools. I'll explain. Hollows gain power by eating the flesh of Shinigami, humans, and other hollows. In addition, all hollows have the inherent ability to retain excess power when going through evolutionary leaps. In other words, it means that the gap between the next evolutionary stage becomes closer. However, when hollows go through an evolutionary leap, their last meal was usually a fairly small source of power, so this ability goes unnoticed by the vast majority of evolving hollows. He stared down at the new Ajuchas. But, when the hollow consumes a being of much greater power than them, the ability becomes clear. They evolve much quicker than any other hollow using a different method ever could. Do you understand? A look of understanding and some nods answered Barragan's question. I don't know how that young hollow managed to do it, but he did. He consumed a very large source of power right before he evolved into a Gillian, and so he was able to evolve into an Ajuchas after consuming a mere few Gillian. Barragan took his eyes off Naruto, only to notice very concerned looks. His vassals were clearly worried about Naruto's rapid increase in power. The king stood up. This amusing little show has gone on long enough. This has been a great embarrassment to all of Las Noches. Our arena fighters failed to best a couple of puny little ants. It's time to end this, he said. Naruto was already giving a show down there. The crowd was absolutely outraged. First Gillian, now Ajuchas. What next? Naruto reared back his head and laughed uproariously, contrasting his dull, emotionless Gillian behavior. This one had the personality of the original Hollow Naruto. Loopy, flamboyant, and evil. I'm back. I'm back. I'm back. Yeah! Being a Gillian wasn't fun at all. That big-ass body, the lack of talking, and the fact that I was slow as hell. But now I'm an Ajuchas, and I'm ready to spread some carnage once again, the new Ajuchas screamed to the entire crowd. The crowd booed him. Naruto laughed. Ah, are you guys happy to see little ol' me? I'm so flattered I think I could cry. True to his word, he started making obnoxious, sarcastic crying noises, falling to the ground because of the emotional joy. The crowd screamed in anger even more. Naruto got to his feet, adopting a serious look on his face. Well, it just so turns out I have a special surprise for every one of you, my wonderful fans out there in the audience. More boos. I'm putting on a special performance, all about my wonderful and epitomal self, just for you. I will host it in the first cave to the west of Las Noches in 1 week, so make sure you'll be there. The admission fee will just be your life, he said scarily. Silence, and then laughter from Naruto. Oops, I guess I can't put on a show for you if you're all dead. Silly me. Guess there will be no show after all. Bet you're all real disappointed now, aren't you? Well, that's too bad, because I won't be able to do it for you. The crowd hissed, and Baragan was surprised when Naruto turned his full attention on him. And you? Naruto yelled dramatically, pointing up at Baragan in his balcony. I'll bet you're real disappointed. I know how much you love me, gay man. Enough to lock me up in prison for 3 years, and then make me compete in this worthless excuse for an arena. Well, you know what? Here's my response to that. The Ajuchas opened his mouth and sucked in a breath full of air. Tiny little particles of orange light gathered at the opening of his mouth, forming the familiar ball shape of a zero. As the crowd heard the signature hissing sound of death, a sense of dread settled in every one of their stomachs. In the center of the hollow's mouth, a full-fledged zero had formed of a gleaming orange color. And he was aiming it directly at Baragan. He wouldn't. Naruto released his zero, the brilliant orange beam of light racing to where Baragan was calmly sitting. The zero nailed the balcony, being entirely engulfed in the strong orange light. Every hollow in the stadium turned in pure fear towards their attacked king and god. Okay, so he would. Feeling satisfied, Naruto walked on over to where Furumo's was standing, with a dumb look on his face from what had just happened. Now you've really rattled the monkey cage, he murmured, just loud enough for Naruto to hear him. Naruto chuckled. Shall we go, then? I've got our escape route all set up, he said, gesturing over the hole he had come out of. His demeanor had changed completely, from the crazy slasher to a sane, though still sadistic individual. It made Furumo's wonder what the hell was happening with the fox. Speaking of the escape route, the mole hollow Naruto had fought earlier was groggily getting to his feet, using his powerful claws to clamber his way out of the giant hole. The poor hollow never expected his previous opponent to hop into the air, and come down foot first on his head using a strong, downward thrust. The mole coughed up blood as Naruto's powerful claws sank into the mole's flesh. His vision blurred and became distorted, though his head was held aloft by Naruto. Now. You can't fall unconscious on us. That just will not do. You see, you are going to play a pivotal role in my brilliant escape plan, whether you want to or not, whispered Naruto in an eerie voice. The mole whimpered slightly, scarcely viewing Naruto's scary expression and hearing his hushed whisper. Dig. Every eye in the stadium, every spectator's mask was turned toward their king's balcony. The orange light had shielded their king's condition completely from view, and after it had dissipated, the smoke that had risen from the rubble created nothing more than a hazy, distorted silhouette of the skeleton. The smoke cleared after around a minute, but as soon as they found out their king was alive, it did nothing more than increase their fears. Baragan did not take being attacked very well. And when he was attacked, he tended to go on a violent rampage, executing everything in sight. Many hollows lived in constant fear of those rampages. It truly was the fear they had of their god. It was not to live in fear of his power. It was to live in fear of his previous actions. That was true submission. When he rose, the whole stadium buckled. A putrid purple mist was coming from his mouth, and even though it was slight, it was enough to begin rotting away the material that made up his balcony. The zero had scalded the entire area to Baragan's right, and it was clear that Baragon had batted it away with one hand. Still, the fact that he, a god, had been attacked, it left a bitter taste in his mouth. By mere ants, no less. The ants had somehow been able to avoid all the dangers of his arena, and with some massive bullshit that involved the vulgar fox hollow evolving twice, had defeated all of his Gillian. Now, although the experience was humiliating and degrading for him, he wasn't stupid. Just because they defeated his arena fighters by no means meant that they'd be able to defeat his army. Hell, just one of his personal guard would be enough for them. Speaking of which, his personal guard was standing poised stoically right beside him, 6 powerful Ajuchas ready to fight to the death for their king. He was about to motion for them to finish the job, when he noticed something curious down on the field. There was a stout mole hollow, one of his judging by the insignia, who was being forced to dig a path for the fox Ajuchas. Within 5 seconds, the fox hollow had disappeared into the earth, the firefly Ajuchas following up the rear a few seconds later. Baragon could have screamed in absolute rage. First, those little ants make a big mockery of the greatest competition he could think of, and now they believe they could away with it scot-free. He lowered his hand, deciding not to send his guards after them through the hole. They'll have to surface eventually. It's impossible to burrow out of the palace because the hard material goes underground as well. Though, they might not resurface until the very last minute. Which means I'll have to. You, pointing to the guard directly to his right, who stood up straight. Place the entire palace on lockdown. Do not let a single hollow in or out of these walls, he ordered. The guard bowed to his master, and with a quick "sire," he disappeared. With the first guard gone, Baragon turned his attention to the guard on his left. And you, gather all the main forces and capture those 2 renegade hollows, for committing the crime of avoiding divine judgment. Alert all of my vassals to their presence and order them to report to the local authorities if they spot the fugitives. Once you have captured them, bring them directly to my throne room. Baragon paused, his face holding a look of determination. I want to deal with them personally. So this was it, for this part of the What If. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you enjoyed this What If, and want to see next part of it, comment down below and let me know. And also subscribe to this channel for more awesome content. See you in the next video. Peace.